She's been thrown out of 3 apartments for not paying rent. So if any of you have daughters looking for roommates, do not hand Haley a lease or a key, my mother said. And 31 women at my cousin's bridal shower went quiet. It was not gossip. It was a public accusation with a number in it, a warning attached to it, and it cost me a place to live within 48 hours. By the end of that month, I had lost 1 apartment on Maple Street, one $900 hold deposit, and one more landlord after my mother put the same lie in writing. Then a 72-year-old neighbor in a Navy windbreaker walked into my cousin's rehearsal dinner and repeated one sentence my father had bragged to him at a block party, and my mother could not finish saying my name. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My name is Haley Morgan Pierce. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to South Bend, Indiana, on Saturday, April 13th, 2024. The bridal shower was at St. Casimir's Parish Hall on West Sample Street, the old brick one with the glossy linoleum floors and the ceiling fans that click on the lowest setting. It smelled like lemon cleaner, buttercream frosting, and coffee that had been sitting on the warmer too long. My cousin Dana was opening gifts at a long table under paper roses in blush and cream. There were little cucumber sandwiches curling at the edges and pink napkins printed with Mrs. Bell in gold script that rubbed off onto your fingers if your hands were damp. I remember where I was standing because I had just set down a crystal mixing bowl from the registry and tucked the card under it. I was next to the punch table, near the stack of plastic cups, when my mother, Denise Pierce, said it into the room in the same voice she used to ask someone to pass the salad. She has been evicted 3 times for not paying rent. I would hate to see another girl learn that the hard way. She was talking to Dana's future mother-in-law, Linda Bell, and 2 of Linda's sisters from Elkhart, but she said it loudly enough for half the room to hear and softly enough that it sounded intimate like concern. That was her talent. She weaponized volume. 31 women had RSVP'd. 28 were there. I know because Dana had asked me to check names at the door for the first half hour while she fixed a torn hem upstairs in the church office. So when I say the room went quiet, I mean 28 women, one church hall, and the sound of a spoon hitting the side of a punch bowl because the woman holding it forgot to stop stirring. I looked at my mother. My father, Robert Pierce, was not supposed to be there because it was a bridal shower, but he had come by with 2 folding tables and stayed near the kitchen doors with Dana's father, pretending to help. He heard it. He looked at the floor. That isn't true, I said. I said it once, calmly. I did not raise my voice because I knew the trap. If I sounded upset, I would become the story instead of the lie. My mother gave me that patient expression she used when she wanted an audience to think she was dealing with someone fragile. Haley, she said, you know the truth is not always comfortable. That was when Dana's friend Melissa, the maid of honor, looked from my mother to me and stepped back half a pace like she did not want to be in the middle of a family thing. 4 women near the dessert table stopped talking. Someone's phone buzzed on a chair and no one reached for it. I did not cry. I did not plead. Instead, I picked up my purse, found Dana in the church office upstairs, told her quietly that I was leaving, and drove back to the room I was renting on East Wayne Street, above a barber shop that played old Isley Brothers records all afternoon. I could still smell the buttercream on my fingers on the steering wheel. That is what people forget about humiliation. The scene is one part, the paperwork is the other. By Monday afternoon, the woman who had shown me the studio on Maple Street texted me that she had decided to go with another applicant. On Tuesday morning, she called back because she sounded guilty. Her name was Sharon Velasquez. She was 60, owned 3 little buildings on the near northwest side, and managed them herself out of a home office with plastic runners over the carpet. She said, Haley, I think I owe you honesty. Someone called me Sunday evening and said you had been evicted from 3 prior apartments for non-payment and that your application was dishonest. I stood in the hallway outside the break room at work with the vending machine humming behind me and the smell of microwave popcorn in the air. I worked front desk at a physical therapy clinic on North Main Street. Then, I had 10 minutes on my lunch break and 1 paper cup of burnt coffee in my hand. Did they say who they were? I asked. Your mother, Sharon said. Denise Pierce. She said she was trying to save me trouble. I closed my eyes. Did she leave a message? No, she spoke to me directly. I wrote down the time. 12:14 p.m. Tuesday, April 16th. Sharon Velasquez. Maple Street application denied after call from Denise Pierce. I wrote everything down because my body had already learned before my mind did that I was going to need a record. If you've ever had that moment where you know everything is about to change, not the dramatic kind, the administrative kind, then you know the feeling. Your chest goes cold first. Your brain starts making lists before your heart catches up. Stay with me, because the first thing I did next is what saved me 6 weeks later. I asked Sharon if she would tell me exactly what had been said. She hesitated. Then she did. She said my mother told her I had been removed 3 times through the court process and that I would perform well in interviews and then stop paying once I had keys. None of that had happened. Not one word of it. I had moved 3 times in 5 years, yes. Once from a student apartment in Muncie when I transferred schools. Once from a 2-bedroom in Mishawaka when my roommate got engaged and moved to Fort Wayne. Once from a tiny duplex on Campo Street because the plumbing backed up black water twice in 1 month, and the property was sold in probate. I had never been evicted. I had never been taken to court over rent. I had never once paid late enough to get a notice taped to my door. Sharon said, "I'm sorry, I got nervous. I rented it to someone else yesterday morning." Then she added the part that made my ears ring. "And because I had already held it for you after your deposit, I need to ask my bookkeeper whether I can return the 900. I had dropped off that $900 hold deposit in cashier's check form on Friday, April 12th, at 11:10 in the morning. I still had the carbon copy stapled to the receipt in my glove compartment. My planned move-in was May 1st. My current room rental ended April 30th. In one phone call, my mother had made me newly homeless in 13 days. I asked Sharon one more question. "Would you be willing to put in writing that my mother called you and said that?" She was quiet for a long second. Then she said, "If my husband says that is okay, yes." I thanked her and hung up. I did not call my mother. I did not call my father. Instead, I opened a notes app folder called Housing. Then I made a Google Drive folder with the same name. Then I started gathering records. First, I ran a search in St. Joseph County Public Records for my name and every address I had ever lived at in Indiana. Nothing. No eviction filings. No small claims for unpaid rent. No possession actions. I took screenshots with the URL visible and emailed them to myself. Then I pulled my lease packet from Muncie out of a blue accordion folder under my bed. Campus Edge Apartments, signed August 3rd, 2019. Final ledger showing zero balance. Move-out inspection signed by Assistant Manager Talia Brooks. Security deposit mailed out in the amount of $320 on July 21st, 2021. I scanned all of it at the library on South Michigan Street because my printer at home made gray streaks down the page. Then I emailed the office for the Mishawaka apartment. Cedar Grove Townhomes on Bremen Highway. They sent back my tenant ledger by 4:26 that afternoon. Every payment, every month last line. Account closed, no balance due. The duplex took longer because the owner had died, and the probate sale had gone through a company called Danner Residential Holdings. I found the old property manager's number in a text thread from October. Her name was Kirsten Hale. She remembered me because I had sent her pictures of sewage coming up in the tub and because I had been weirdly calm about it. She emailed me the termination letter she had written saying the lease was ending due to property transfer, not tenant default. By 8:40 that night, my laptop screen looked like a tax office. PDFs, screenshots, subject lines, dates. I was sitting on my mattress on the floor because I had already sold my bed frame to make the Maple Street move easier. The room smelled like dust and peppermint tea. Cars hissed through rain outside the half-open window. I remember thinking, not how could she? Not even why me? I remember thinking very clearly she used a lie with paperwork language in it because she knew people would believe paperwork language. That is how specific betrayal gets when it comes from your parents. They know which story shape will survive first contact with strangers. My mother called me at 9:13 p.m. I let it ring 4 times and answered on the 5th. "Why did you leave Dana's shower in that manner?" she asked. "In what manner?" Sharp, public, designed to embarrass me. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was precise. She had accused me in public, and by nightfall she had revised the event so I was the one who performed something. "You told people I had been evicted 3 times. I told the truth as I understand it. No, I said. You lied to a landlord too. Silence. Then a small inhale. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sharon Velasquez, Maple Street. My mother lowered her voice the way she did when she wanted to sound serious enough to become believable. Haley, you are not in a stable season. I am trying to protect people from the version of you that makes reckless choices. That phrase sat in my ear for a second. Not stable season. That was church language she used when she wanted to dress contempt as concern. You called my landlord. You are 24. If a landlord asks whether you are reliable, I will not lie. She did not ask you. My mother let that go, which told me more than if she had argued it. I think you should come home for dinner Thursday, she said. Your father is very upset. I said, email me whatever you want to say. Then I hung up. I had been keeping that folder for less than 12 hours and already I knew it was going to become my life for a while. Now, let me take you back to Friday, March 29th, 2024, 2 weeks before the bridal shower, 6:20 p.m. Eleanor Street block party. This is the part I did not understand until much later. My parents lived in a beige split level on Eleanor Street in a South Bend neighborhood where everyone had known everyone else's dogs and business since at least 2 mayors ago. Every spring, when the weather finally got above 50 and stayed there, 3 houses would drag grills into driveways and everybody would rotate between them with paper plates. My parents loved that kind of thing because it gave them an audience and plausible deniability. Nothing was ever announced. It was just conversation. I had stopped by after work because my father had texted me at 3:52 that afternoon, asking if I could bring 2 bags of ice. He never texted in full sentences, so the message was just, "Need ice on your way?" I grabbed them from Martin's on 23rd Street and pulled up around 6:20. Kids were drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. Somebody had a Bluetooth speaker playing Fleetwood Mac too quietly. There was charcoal smoke and cut grass and somebody's citronella candle, making the whole block smell like fake lemon. I stayed 40 minutes. That matters. I talked to Mrs. Albright from the corner house about her knee replacement, hugged my old 5th-grade teacher, Mr. Renner, and helped my father carry a folding table back into the garage when the wind tipped one side. Then I left because my boyfriend at the time, Jonah, was making dinner in Mishawaka, and I had promised to be there by 7:15. At 7:58, while I was sitting on Jonah's couch eating overcooked salmon and asparagus that squeaked when you bit it, my cousin Dana texted me, "Your mom is talking crazy outside. Did something happen with apartments?" I stared at the message. Then I called her. Dana answered in a whisper from somebody's bathroom because her little half-laugh echoed off tile. "What is she saying?" Dana paused. "She told Linda Bell and Mrs. Cardenas that you've been evicted multiple times, like from actual apartments." I thought maybe I misunderstood. "Did she use the number 3?" Another pause. "Yes." I looked at Jonah across the room. He muted the TV and sat up. "Who was there?" I asked. Dana started listing names. Linda Bell, Tanya Bell, Rose Cardenas, Mr. Oakes from 2 doors down, Jean Holloway from the Yellow Ranch, at least 8 or 9 adults within earshot. She said my father was right there by the cooler and nodded once when Linda said, "3 times?" That last part landed harder than the rest. It is a strange thing to hear that someone has assigned a fake history to you while you're chewing dinner. The room stays ordinary, your body doesn't. I remember the smell of salmon and black pepper turning metallic in my nose. I remember setting my fork down very carefully on a paper towel because Jonah had no placemats. I texted my mother that night at 8:22. "Dana says you told people at the block party I had been evicted 3 times. Did you say that?" She replied at 8:47. "People are concerned about you?" I answered honestly. That screenshot became Exhibit B in my folder. I should tell you why the apartment lie worked so well. It was close enough to something true to travel fast. I had moved back in with my parents for 4 months in late 2023 after a breakup, and after the duplex plumbing issue, I hated it. They loved it. I paid them $400 a month, bought my own groceries, and kept my toiletries in a shower caddy like I was 17, because if I left anything in the bathroom, my mother would tidy it and then I would find my razor under a stack of washcloths in the linen closet. In January of 2024, I moved into the room over the barbershop on East Wayne from a month-to-month listing in a Facebook housing group. It was temporary, and everyone knew it was temporary. So if my mother wanted to spin Haley has had a few unstable housing situations into Haley has been evicted 3 times, she had enough raw material to make nosy people feel wise for believing it. Jonah believed me at first. That changed after the bridal shower. 3 days after Sharon called about Maple Street, Jonah came over with Thai takeout in brown paper bags and a face I recognized immediately. It was the face men make when they are trying to seem reasonable while already leaning away from you. We sat on the floor because, again, no bed frame. The yellow curry was too sweet, and the rice had that dry edge from being under the heat lamp too long. My mom heard something from Dana's future in-laws, he said, about rental history. Rental lies, I said. He nodded, but slowly, not cleanly. I know, I'm just saying it gets complicated if there are records we don't know about. I looked at him. I pulled county records, I said. I have every ledger, every move-out statement. I know, but your mom sounds very sure. There's a point in some relationships where you hear the floorboards crack under them. Not an explosion, a structural noise. My mother sounded very sure when she told my aunt I was dramatic because I cried after getting my wisdom teeth out. She sounded very sure when she told my high school counselor I was quitting track because I didn't like discipline, when actually I tore cartilage in my hip. Confidence is not evidence. Jonah rubbed the back of his neck. He had a silver wedding band indentation from a college relationship he never talked about. I had noticed it the first week we dated and pretended not to. I'm not saying she's right, he said. I'm saying if this keeps spreading, I don't want to get pulled into a housing mess. That was the moment I knew we were done. Not because he doubted me for 1 hour, because he was already rearranging his life around the possibility that my mother's lie might be easier to live with than my truth. I said, okay. He waited, maybe for a fight, maybe for tears. He got neither. The next morning, Wednesday, April 17th at 7:10 a.m., I texted him, I think we should end this here. I don't want to be with someone who treats my mother's rumor like due diligence. He replied with a paragraph about stress and timing. I did not answer. That cost mattered too. Reputation damage is not abstract when it changes who feels safe standing next to you. On Thursday evening, I got the email my mother had told me to ask for. Subject line, clarifying context. Sent from her church committee account because she knew I would save it and she wanted the signature block under her name. Denise Pierce, Outreach Coordinator, St. Luke's Women's Fellowship. It was 4 paragraphs of poison and cardigan language. She wrote that I had a pattern of housing disruptions tied to immaturity and inconsistent payment priorities. She wrote that 3 separate landlords asked her family for help after Haley failed to maintain basic obligations. She wrote that she had never used the legal word eviction, but had described the practical reality. That line mattered. She was already building herself a backdoor. If anyone cornered her later, she could say people misheard. I replied with one sentence. Please identify the 3 landlords by name and address. She never answered. Instead, on Saturday morning, my father texted me, do not drag your mother through the mud because you are embarrassed. I saved that too. If you've ever dealt with someone who lies in complete sentences and then tidies the edges of the lie for plausible deniability, you know how exhausting that is. They do not just wound you, they assign you admin work. But this is where the paper trail started becoming stronger than their performance, and one woman I barely knew decided not to stay silent anymore. Her name was Ruth Holloway. I knew Ruth as Mr. Holloway's wife from the Yellow Ranch House, and as the woman who always brought cut-up strawberries in a glass bowl to neighborhood events. She was 72, had a smoker's rasp without being a smoker, and wore navy windbreakers even when it was 70 degrees. On Monday, April 22nd, at 6:35 p.m., she knocked on the door of the rooming house where I lived. I opened the door with my chain still on because I was not expecting anyone. She stood there with a tan envelope and the smell of outside on her damp pavement and some sharp floral detergent. I did not know whether this was my business, she said. Now I do. I let her in. We sat at the tiny laminate table by the window. She did not waste time. Your father was talking at the block party after you left, she said. He had 2 beers. He was proud of himself. I felt my spine go stiff. What did he say? Ruth opened the envelope and took out a notepad page with 3 dates written in blue ink. I wrote it down after because it bothered me, Robert said, and I quote as close as I can. 3 evictions sounds ugly enough that nobody will rent to her. Maybe then she will stop trying to move in with that man and come back home where she belongs. I looked at her, she held my eyes. Then she said the sentence that changed the whole structure of the story. Linda Bell was standing there, and so was Jean Oakes. Jean laughed. Linda did not. The room was so quiet I could hear someone downstairs dragging a barber chair across tile. I read the note in Ruth's handwriting. Date, time, location, names present, quote as remembered. Would you be willing to repeat that if I needed you to? I asked. Ruth folded her hands. I do not enjoy family scenes, but yes. That is the thing about witnesses. The useful ones are not dramatic, they are reluctant. I asked if she would type it and sign it. She said her printer was broken, but her granddaughter could help at the library. On Wednesday, she emailed me a one-page signed statement with her phone number at the bottom. Jean Oakes would not give me anything. Linda Bell would not either. But she did text me. I heard your father say something like that, and I am sorry I did not speak up sooner. I saved the text with a timestamp. Now I had motive, not just lie. Motive. My parents did not want me moving in with Jonah. That part was true. They thought Jonah was unformed, which was my mother's word for men she could not steer. They also hated that I had started setting boundaries in February. I stopped attending St. Luke's with them. I stopped coming to Wednesday dinner every week. I stopped answering my mother's daytime calls during work. To people like my parents, ordinary adulthood feels like rebellion if they cannot supervise it. I met with a friend from high school that Friday. Her name was Marisol Vega. She was not a lawyer, but she worked as a legal assistant at a small civil firm on Jefferson Boulevard and understood records better than anyone I knew my age. We met at Cloud Walking Coffee on Colfax, where the espresso machine shrieked every 90 seconds and the whole place smelled like orange peel and burnt sugar. I spread my folder out on the table between us. Screenshots, ledgers, move-out letters, my mother's email, Sharon's text confirming she would write what happened, Ruth's statement. Marisol did not touch anything for a full minute. She just scanned the pages and then looked at me. This is enough to stop arguing, she said. Now you need to start arranging where truth needs to land. That line stayed with me. She told me to do 3 things. 1, get certified copies of no record results from the county if possible, not just screenshots. 2, ask Sharon for a dated written statement that includes the exact words your mother used, the date of the call, and the amount of the deposit. 3, stop talking to your parents by phone unless you can follow up in writing. I did all 3. On Monday, April 29th at 10:10 a.m., I went to the St. Joseph County Clerk's office in the County City building downtown. The waiting area smelled like old paper, floor wax, and whatever cologne the deputy at security had overused. The clerk who helped me was named Alyssa Noland, according to her badge. She was maybe 30, with square acrylic nails the color of pale lilac. I explained that I needed confirmation of whether any eviction actions had ever been filed under my name in the county. She said, "We can print a search results summary if no cases match." "Please," I said. She printed it. My full name, date of birth, search parameters, no matching eviction or possession filings found in St. Joseph County, dated and stamped. I paid $6. Paper is a beautiful thing when someone has spent weeks trying to turn your life into rumor. Now let me take you back to Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. 4:12 p.m. I was sitting in my car outside work with the engine off because gas was $4.03 that week, and I had started counting idle minutes. Sharon Velasquez emailed me her statement. It was better than I expected because she wrote the way older women sometimes do when they are angry enough to stop softening things. She stated that Denise Pierce called her on Sunday, April 14th at 6:22 p.m. and identified herself as Haley Pierce's mother. She wrote that Denise said, "My daughter has been evicted from 3 apartments for non-payment and she hid that from you. I am calling because I believe in honesty and I would not want you to learn this after handing over keys." Sharon wrote that she relied on this statement and chose another tenant. She also wrote that my $900 hold deposit would not be refunded because she had declined 2 other applicants while holding the unit for me and had incurred additional vacancy time. I read that email 3 times in my car while rain ticked against the windshield. $900 was not theoretical to me. It was 3 extra Saturdays at the clinic. It was plasma donation money from college translated into adult life. It was groceries and gas and dignity. I made $19.20 an hour before taxes. My checking account on April 30th held $1,306.17. Losing 900 because of my mother's call was not a symbolic injury. It was rent. I forwarded Sharon's statement to my mother and father with the subject line, "You cost me $900." Then I attached the county clerk search, the Muncie ledger, the Mishawaka ledger, and the duplex termination letter. In the body, I wrote, "You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to repay the 900 and send a written correction to Sharon Velasquez, Linda Bell, Dana Bell, and anyone else you told I had been evicted 3 times. If you do not, I will bring the full record to the people you lied to." My father responded first. At 4:38 p.m., "You are making threats. This is exactly why people worry." My mother responded at 5:06 p.m., "I will not be extorted into endorsing your revisionist version of events. Your life has been unstable. Adults noticed, revisionist. Extorted, adults." Those were her words. Then she escalated. At 6:41 that evening, she emailed another landlord. I learned that the next morning when a woman named Tessa Harlan from Juniper Property Group left me a voicemail. I had submitted an application the week before for a one-bedroom on Portage Avenue with coin laundry in the basement and heat included, which in northern Indiana is almost erotic when you have been paying electric baseboard bills. Her voicemail said, "Hi Haley, this is Tessa with Juniper. I need to discuss a concern raised by a reference before we can proceed." I called back on my break. Tessa sounded uncomfortable in the clipped professional way people do when they are trying not to admit they are about to punish you based on gossip. She said someone from my family support contact had emailed saying I had concealed multiple non-payment removals. I had not listed family support contact anywhere. I had listed my emergency contact on an old online application portal 18 months earlier when I toured one of Juniper's properties and never rented it. They had my mother because systems remember things you forgot. I asked for the email in writing. Tessa said she could not forward internal communications but could summarize. I asked whether the application would be denied based on unverified third-party statements despite my clean records. She said they would pause it. By 4 that afternoon, she had denied it and kept my $50 application fee. I updated my folder. New tab, Juniper, date, time, contact, summary, lost $50. I also wrote down one other thing because it mattered emotionally, even if it never became evidence. When I called my father that night, he picked up on the second ring, listened to me say, "Mom contacted another landlord and responded, 'You should have thought about that before you tried to make us look dishonest.'" Us. There it was. Not my mother did this, we did this. I stopped trying to split them apart after that. If you have ever been the only person in a family willing to treat facts like facts, you know how lonely that gets. They all keep moving around the lie as if it is furniture and not fire. But I had one more thing they did not know about yet, and by then the wedding calendar was doing me a favor. Dana's rehearsal dinner was Friday, May 17th, at a private room in a restaurant called the Carriage House Grill in Mishawaka. 41 guests, long rectangle room, cream walls, old framed black and white photos of train stations, the kind of place that serves chicken piccata under uplighting and calls it intimate dining. Dana called me on Sunday, May 12th, and asked if I was still coming. "I don't want you to if this will be weird," she said. "It will be weird either way," I said. "I'd rather be there for you." She was quiet. Then she said, "Mom said Aunt Denise is telling people you got denied housing because you lied on applications." I looked at the stack of papers on my table. The folder was now almost an inch and a half thick. "I know," I said. Dana took a breath like she was about to step over something and did not know if the floor would hold. "Linda Bell wants this cleaned up before the wedding," she said. "She thinks your mom involved too many people." That sentence was almost funny. Too many people. As if there was a correct number of strangers to tell your niece was a serial rent dodger. I asked Dana one thing. "If I bring proof, will you let it be seen?" She said yes. So I prepared. I printed 3 bound packets at FedEx office on Grape Road on Wednesday night. One for Dana and her mother, one for Linda Bell, one for myself. Each packet had a cover sheet with a timeline. March 29th, block party statement. April 13th, bridal shower accusation. April 14th, call to Sharon Velasquez. April 30th, email to Juniper. Then the records, clerk search, ledgers, termination letter. Sharon's statement, Ruth's signed witness statement, screenshots of my mother's text and email. Application denial timeline. Deposit receipt. I used plain white paper and black comb binding because I did not want anything that looked theatrical. I wanted office boring. Office boring wins. I also bought one manila envelope and put inside it a money order request form from my bank for $950. That number was deliberate, 900 for the lost hold deposit and 50 for the Juniper application fee. I did not think they would hand me money that night, but I wanted the amount on paper in case anyone tried to talk about feelings instead of costs. On Thursday evening, one day before the rehearsal dinner, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Haley, she said, every syllable controlled. I have heard you are planning something disruptive around Dana's weekend. If you embarrass this family because you're frustrated with adult feedback, you will regret it. Adult feedback. I saved the voicemail under the file name 2024-05-16 Dinis Stratwav. That is one thing I want to say directly to anyone listening. If someone keeps trying to force your reality to depend on their wording, save the wording. Their language always tells on them first. Now, let me take you back to Friday, May 17th, 2024. 7:19 p.m. rehearsal dinner. The server had just set down baskets of bread that smelled like rosemary and warm yeast. Glasses were clinking. Someone at the far end laughed too loudly at a story about centerpieces. My parents were there. My mother in a navy sheath dress with pearl earrings she only wore when she wanted to look respectable enough to survive contradiction. My father in a gray sport coat that still held a little of his aftershave, cedar, and something medicinal. Dana's future in-laws were there too. Linda Bell, Tanya Bell, Rose Cardenas. Gene Oakes had somehow also been invited because he was old friends with Dana's future father-in-law through Rotary. That mattered later. I got there early and gave one packet to Dana in the hallway by the coat rack. She looked at the cover sheet, inhaled, and said, "Okay." I gave another to Linda Bell near the bar. She held it like it might stain. Then I sat down at the far end of the table beside Melissa and drank water with lemon I never touched. I did not stand up and make a speech. I did not accuse anyone. Instead, I waited. That was the whole plan. Put the record in the room and wait for people with more social power than me to decide whether they wanted to eat chicken piccata next to a lie. Dinner made it through the salad. Barely. I could feel it moving under the conversation, the way a table can feel unstable before anybody admits a leg is uneven. People were too cheerful by half. Dana's mother kept smoothing her napkin. My father would not look at me. Then Linda Bell did something I will always be grateful for. She stood, not dramatically, just enough to make people stop talking. She said, "Before we continue, I want one thing clarified because my family has been drawn into it." The room went silent fast. 41 people, maybe 2 seconds. My mother set her fork down. Linda held the packet in one hand. I was told by Denise Pierce more than once that Haley had been evicted from 3 apartments for not paying rent. My mother smiled. I said she had housing instability. If that was misunderstood, I regret the confusion. There it was, the back door. Misunderstood. Confusion. Then Linda looked toward the doorway and said, "Ruth, would you come in, please?" I had not known Linda had asked her to come. I genuinely had not. For one perfect second, even I did not know what was about to happen. Ruth Holloway walked into the room wearing her navy windbreaker over a floral blouse, because older women in Indiana treat restaurant private rooms like weather systems, and she held a folded piece of paper in one hand. You could hear the HVAC hum. Someone at the back set a glass down too hard. Ruth did not sit. She did not apologize for being there. She looked at Linda, then at Dana, then at no one in particular and said, "At the block party on Eleanor Street," after Haley left, Robert Pierce said, "3 evictions sounds ugly enough that nobody will rent to her. Maybe then she will stop trying to move in with that man and come back home where she belongs." No flourish, no anger, just the sentence. My father started to say, "Hal," and stopped after the first syllable. My mother's face did not drain or crumple. It did something smaller and stranger. She blinked twice and pressed her lips together like she had tasted something bitter. Then Linda Bell opened the packet and did the second thing my parents were not prepared for. She read from Sharon Velasquez's statement. On Sunday, April 14th at 6:22 p.m., Denise Pierce called me and stated, "My daughter has been evicted from 3 apartments for non-payment, and she hid that from you." You could feel the room shift from family discomfort to documented fact. Linda kept going. I relied on this statement and did not rent to Haley Pierce. I also retained a $900 hold deposit due to vacancy loss. No one spoke, then from halfway down the table, Gene Oakes made the sound men make when they know they are about to be noticed and hate it. He cleared his throat and said, Robert did say something like that outside. Something like that. It was weak. It was enough. Dana's father looked at my mother and said very quietly, Did you call that landlord? My mother answered too quickly. I was trying to protect her from another mistake. That was the whole defense, not denial. Purpose, Rose Cardenas said. By costing her an apartment? And there it was, a witness who was not mine putting the price on it in the room. If you've ever waited months for the truth to become undeniable, then you know it is almost never loud when it arrives. It is administrative. Someone reads, someone confirms. The room recalculates. But one more thing happened that night, and this is the part that still feels almost surgical to me. Linda Bell turned to me and said, Haley, what was your total loss? I answered immediately because I had practiced not sounding emotional when money was the point. $950 so far. 900 hold deposit, 50 application fee, plus the apartment. Linda nodded once. Denise, Robert, you will reimburse that amount tonight or you will not attend tomorrow. My father actually laughed once, under his breath, like he thought she was bluffing. Linda looked at him and said, I am not playing church with this. You do not get to smear one of Dana's cousins in front of my family and then sit in the front row smiling for photos. The server had stopped moving. He was standing by the coffee station pretending to fold napkins while listening to every word. My mother said, This is grotesque. Linda answered, So was the lie. My father opened his mouth, closed it, then said, I do not have my checkbook. I slid the manila envelope across the table. I brought a money order request form. The 24-hour branch on Main closes at 9. That was the first time several people in the room looked at me not with pity but with something closer to respect. Calm can read as weakness until someone sees the folder. My mother stared at the envelope and then at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe that was the first time she understood I was not going to come to the house, cry at the kitchen table, and let her explain me back into obedience. Dana spoke next. She had been silent through all of it, and when she finally did, her voice shook only on the first word. Aunt Denise, Uncle Rob, I need you to leave for a little while and decide whether you're coming back tomorrow as people who repair what they broke or not at all. My mother turned to her. After all we have done for this wedding, Dana said, this is not about napkin rings. Even now, 3 years later, I love her for that sentence. My parents stood, chairs scraped. My father took his suit jacket from the back of the chair and missed the first grab because his hand was shaking just enough to show. My mother picked up her purse and said to no one and everyone, Haley has always enjoyed spectacle. I said nothing. I looked at my water glass. Ruth moved aside so they could pass. My father avoided her eyes. My mother did not. The room stayed silent until the private room door closed behind them. Then the sound came back in pieces. Forks, one cough. Someone exhaling too hard. Linda sat down and said to the server, Could we have 10 minutes before the entrees? Like this happened every week, I thought I would feel triumphant. I did not. I felt tired in a way that had weight, not the crying kind, the lifting kind. That is what revenge looked like in my life. Black comb binding, witness statements, a woman in a windbreaker saying one sentence at the exact right time. My parents came back 46 minutes later. I know because I checked the lock screen on my phone when the private room door opened again. 8:23 p.m. My chicken had gone lukewarm under the silver dome. The rosemary smell had flattened into butter. My father was carrying an envelope from First National Bank. My mother had reapplied lipstick. They did not sit immediately. My father walked to my end of the table and placed the envelope in front of me. Inside was a cashier's check for $950 made out to Haley M. Pierce, issued at 7:58 p.m., Main Street branch. He said this should resolve the practical concern, not apology concern. I looked at the check, then at him. It covers the money, I said. He nodded once. My mother added, We will not discuss private family matters further in public. Linda Bell actually laughed at that. Just one clean disbelieving sound. Then she said, You already did. They were allowed to stay for the rest of dinner because Dana wanted peace for her wedding morning. but they were moved from the family table to the far side near two church friends who had arrived late and had no idea why the room felt like a funeral home with centerpieces. The next day, they were not in the getting ready suite. Dana made that call before 8 a.m. She also removed my mother from the gift table volunteer schedule and reassigned her church friends. My parents still attended the ceremony because Linda and Dana agreed that barring them from the church itself would create a second spectacle. But they were not in family photos after the ceremony except one large group shot required by Dana's grandmother, and even then my mother was on the far end by a potted fern. That was one price, social, specific, visible. The second price came on Monday. Linda Bell sent a group email to every woman who had attended the bridal shower, plus Dana's aunts and bridal party with the subject line correction regarding Haley Pierce. She attached the county clerk search and Sharon's statement with my permission. Her email was brief. A false statement about Haley's rental history was repeated at Dana's shower. Documentation confirms Haley has no eviction record. Please do not repeat the earlier claim. 28 recipients, I know, because she BCC'd most people but copied me and Dana. My mother was not copied, that was deliberate. The third price came from church. Remember that signature block my mother had used in her email to me? Outreach coordinator, St. Luke's Women's Fellowship? That mattered more than she realized, because she had used a church title while spreading a false claim, and because Linda Bell happened to be close friends with the wife of the church council treasurer. I did not contact the church. Linda did. On Thursday, May 23rd, St. Luke's asked my mother to step down from organizing the summer women's shelter fundraiser until trust could be restored. That was the language Dana later relayed to me from her mother, who had heard it directly from the treasurer's wife, Carol Mendez. My mother loved that role. It gave her a microphone, a sign-up sheet, and a room full of women conditioned to treat her as efficient and kind. Losing it hit her harder than the check. My father paid too, though in a quieter way. Gene Oakes and the men on Eleanor Street stopped inviting him to the Friday garage beers for the rest of that summer. Small-town male shame has its own methods. Nobody announces it. The cooler just doesn't get set out in front of your driveway anymore. As for Juniper Property Group, I mailed them the packet and asked them to remove any family contacts from old application data and place a note that third-party claims about evictions had been proven false. A woman named Karen Bledsoe from compliance emailed back that they had updated my file. Her exact line was, "No adverse housing action should be based on the prior communication from Denise Pierce." I printed that too. 3 weeks later, on Tuesday, June 11th at 9:40 a.m., I signed a lease for a one-bedroom on East LaSalle Avenue, $785 a month, hardwood floors that sloped slightly toward the windows, radiator heat, old brass doorknobs. The place smelled like dust, old paint, and someone else's vanilla candle the first time I turned the key. It was not glamorous, it was mine. My mother texted me that evening. "I hear you found a place. I hope you make better choices there." I looked at the message for a long time. Then I took a screenshot, saved it to the folder, and did not answer. People always ask whether my parents ever apologized. No. What they did instead was try to sand down the story around the edges. My mother told one aunt that things had been mischaracterized in the emotion of wedding week. My father told a neighbor there had been a misunderstanding about references. Neither of them ever said the words. We lied that Haley had been evicted 3 times, so landlords would reject her and she would move back home. But people knew that was enough. Ruth and I still speak sometimes. Not often. Christmas cards, one phone call when her husband fell and broke his wrist. I brought her strawberries last June and we sat on her porch while cicadas screamed from the maples. She said I should have spoken sooner at the block party. I told her, "You spoke when it counted." Both things were true. Jonah texted me in August, after hearing through people that the eviction story was made up. "I owe you an apology. I should have believed you. He was right. He did." I thanked him for saying it. Nothing resumed. Some damage is not dramatic enough for songs, but final enough for silence. As for the folder, I kept it for 11 months in the bottom drawer of my kitchen cart, under takeout menus and a roll of parchment paper. I finally archived it after my 25th birthday, when my new landlord renewed my lease without hesitation, and my life had gone long enough without my mother being able to touch my housing. That is the concrete ending if you need one. My parents lost $950 that night. My mother lost her church position. Both of them lost their easy standing at Dana's wedding and on Eleanor Street. They also lost access to parts of my life they used to treat as theirs by default. They have never had a key to my apartment. They do not get my landlord's names. They do not get my work address unless I choose to give it. If we meet, it is in public, for coffee, in daylight, and I leave with my own car. I wish I could tell you winning erased the original humiliation. It did not. I can still smell buttercream and lemon cleaner when I think about that bridal shower. I can still hear my mother's voice saying, "Do not hand Haley a lease or a key," like she was protecting the room from me. There are some injuries that remain sensory long after they stop being active. And I need to be honest about one more thing. Part of me still mourns the version of adulthood I thought I was going to have. The one where your parents are embarrassing in ordinary ways. The one where they overwater your plants when they visit or ask nosy questions about your budget. Not this. Not organized humiliation. Not using strangers as tools. But I also know this now. When someone tries to bury you under a false story, you do not have to outshout them. You just have to outlast them and hand the truth to the right person in a room they care about. If you've ever had to become your own witness because the people who should have protected you were the ones doing the damage, I am sorry. Truly, it changes you. It makes you quieter in some places and sharper in others. But quiet is not the same as weak. Quiet is how I won. My name is Haley Morgan Pierce. I was 24 when my mother told a bridal shower I had been evicted from 3 apartments for not paying rent. She said it first at a block party. She said it again in a church hall. She called one landlord and emailed another. She cost me 1 apartment and $950. And then a woman in a navy windbreaker walked into a rehearsal dinner and said one sentence out loud. That sentence gave me my name